This video is for musicians and artists that feel the social, societal, and cultural pressures and different aspects of navigating arts and entertainment. I don't know about you, but I personally have a bunch of triggers built up around different people just talking to me about their opinions around music. And it really, at points in my life, has taken a lot to dial that back and not get so enraged and not actually push it down as well, because that creates this sort of like time bomb that I'm just like ready to freak out at someone because they don't understand my perception of art and music. And it can be very infuriating, and you can really cope with it in a lot of the wrong ways, and I think a lot of us do. I think a lot of you artists you're not really estranged to the fact that you can have bad habits or addictions or negative coping mechanisms to deal with the feeling of lack and the feeling of being misunderstood. I know in my life I always have to keep a keen eye focusing on the balance between my intact familial ties and speaking my mind. I'm still working through that. That comes on an artistic level, but also on a personal level, of where people want to tell you, and by people I mean people like my family, close members of my family, even my parents, try to tell me different things that they want to perceive about how to pursue music. Who's doing this in music and who's doing that in music. And I have a rough time trying to constantly like hold my tongue and not say that it is the furthest thing from relevant so many of these times. And you probably experience this as well, when maybe in your day-to-day, if you're deeply into your art and your craft, it probably doesn't really stimulate you when someone tries to tell you about Leonard Skinner or name someone else, I mean, it doesn't mean you can't like Leonard Skinner or Taylor Swift or whatever, like rap icons. Doesn't mean you don't have to hate these icons. They're good for a reason, but I think it's underestimated how little this means to the common modern artist. So I'm just going to touch a little further into a few of these things because they do fucking piss me off sometimes. I'm sure they piss you off. I'm sure you've had your own experience of having positive or negative coping mechanisms trying to just socialize in a normie kind of way to people when they're really not going to understand your artistic vision. And describing it is to describe something intangible, which is yet to be determined. So it's okay. Here we go. Let's talk about some of it. Just holding and drawing your attention past the mainstream debates is something I was going into a little bit with some of my friends yesterday, who are also artists and musicians. And I even got wrapped up in this for a while. You feel like the culture war stuff and even the pop culture drama is something that like should be on your radar as a music maker or an artist, a creative of any type, knowing who's making the waves and who's ruffling feathers and stuff like that. It's easy to get wrapped up in, and I understand why people who don't make music and art get wrapped up in it, but it's a little bit of a different balance as well for people who do make art and music to get wrapped up and know what Kanye's up to and know what Kendrick's up to and all this weird celebrity icon shit sort of doesn't really fuse with the modern artist all that well, I don't believe. If it's not, especially if it's not along the guise of inspiration, so much of our society is conflated at this point, so where it's hard to be just an artist without being a public figure, without having a political opinion, without having a certain medical perspective, and so on and so on. And for a while I would, even integrating personal branding in with musicianship and band branding has become this whole experiment in what are we really cultivating here, and how much can you be inspired by someone before you realize or you decide on your own that they're just some kind of grifter just trying to make a dollar off of pandering to a certain crowd. This happens all over the place right now in art and music, and the influencer music model, that it can be very wearing on your time and energy, and you have to you have to bring attention back to the fact that why is it affecting you so much, and where is it building new walls that you didn't need there before, you never thought of being there before. Part of the overstimulation of the digital age. There's also something that's happened, and I know a lot of you resonate with this as well, is that, there can be tons of great, incredibly talented people out there. There's no doubt about that. Everywhere you look, creatives are putting talent, skill in an entertaining fashion in your face, whether it's in a live sense or a online sense. But it blows my mind that some people are out there still playing the same country music or the same blues music and the same rock and roll. And that's great and all. If that's your thing, 100% go get it. But to me, it feels so self-sabotaging in a way to be so talented, but yet sound so generic at the end of the day. And I have no other real way of describing this than falling into that of the genre, like I was saying. It's just a really weird thing to me, and to where you can't even hear it. It's not the talent that speaks through anymore. It's the independence, it's the genuineness, and it's the character. I think people experience it. Guitar players experience this because, everyone can play complicated stuff, but what really stands out? What really resonates? Same thing with like DJs. DJs are a dime a dozen. What's standing out? What makes a DJ more known at this point in time besides icon status? How do you break through that veil? And what I can tell you is that when you listen to radio music and stuff like that, and if it just sounds like white noise to you, like maybe you are really truly shifting into a different state of consciousness. And I believe a lot of us are going through this. I think artists are on the front line of all of this, but I do think that this is happening in a conscious collective way as well. This is a hard one for me, but because I've cultivated a taste that I like, does that mean I'm a snob? Sometimes I think it does. Sometimes maybe I feel like I'm being an asshole. And you probably feel the same way. Just because you have specific tastes and you're not cast in this broad net of modern music and mainstream music and art, the consumer's class of creativity and fandom, does it mean that you are does it mean you're a prissy motherfucker about it? Like yes and no, I would say is the answer, because sure, it's more, the question to me is it worth being particular about what you like and being able to define what you don't, and actually pull it apart and say, this is why this is worth something to me. Maybe something is just too commercialized at some point, and I fully believe that does ruin things. We've all had the experience of actually being fed up with a song, not because it's a bad song, but because it's just overplayed. And this is where on a personal level, this is where I just can't wait for classic rock to die. But let it be there, it's going to be. It's okay to be a snob when it comes to this stuff, It's mind-blowing that most consumers of music and art and media consume it on such a small little microcosmic level, and don't even ever tap into the deep sea of artistic creation in the rest of their lives. It's okay if you're infuriated about it, honestly. It's 100% okay. I totally understand you. I am often. The struggle is invisible to most of the public eye, and it'll probably continue to be that way. Finding the right coping mechanisms to deal with all this stuff is actually the biggest issue I believe we have as individuals, as we are taking on our own sovereign nature and becoming responsible for as many aspects of our life as we can. So I implore you to look at yourself a little bit deeper. If you feel like you are holding back what you need to say, even if it is a critique and it may be challenged by everyone in the room, maybe it's better to speak it than to just hold it in. I deal with this a lot, of suppressing emotions, and I have in the past. This goes even deeper and channels right into rage and anger. And if you're feeling rage and anger, look further for the source of it and try and unravel that, smooth that out on your own. Because if we can get to the source of what's causing these triggers around things that we are genuinely passionate about, then we can dissolve what's underneath all of it, thus freeing up more energy for ourselves, freeing up more coherence for our artistic and creative pursuits. That's how you make a valuable shift as a conscious artist and a conscious creator.